order. If everyone would please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, before we get underway, there's a couple of things I'd like to review with everyone. First off, welcome to the October meeting of the Zoning Board of Appeals of the Town of Arundequoit. The fire exit is located to your left. In the event of a fire, you will be notified by an announcement. If so notified, please move in a calm and orderly fashion to the exit. Do not use the elevators. Use either the front or the back stairs to leave the building. The meeting is being recorded by our secretary, Donna, for the purpose of a record and minutes, not as a verbatim transcript of the meeting. Each time you come to the podium, if you'd please identify yourself so that she can record who it is that's speaking. And please speak into the microphone so that everyone can hear you. We follow the items in the order they appear on the agenda. There are extra copies of the agenda on the table by the door as you come in. Once the case has been called, the applicant or their representative needs to come to the podium, identify himself or herself, state their address, then they'll pause, raise their right hand, be sworn, and then they'll have the opportunity to present their case to the board. During their presentation, the board members may ask questions, engage in discussion, make comments, whatever. Once that process has been completed, then we'll open it up to public input. We have 3 categories so far, we're open to more, of public input. First, we'll hear from those who wish to speak in favor of the application. If there's more than one of you, if you just line up over there, come to the podium, identify yourself by your name and address. The comments get directed to members of the board, not to the applicant or their representative. After we hear from everyone who wishes to speak in favor of the application, we'll then ask for those who wish to speak in opposition to the application to come forward and go through the same process. After we've heard from those who are opposed to the application, we then open up to those who aren't in favor or opposed to the application but just want to talk to us about whatever it may be that's on their mind as long as it relates to the application. Once we've completed that category, then we'll give the applicant the opportunity to return to the podium and follow up on anything that came up during the public input portion. Once that process is completed, the case will be closed and we'll move on to the next case. After we've heard all the cases, the board takes a short recess, the length of which depends upon a number of factors and will be announced at the time we take the recess. When we return from the recess, we engage in the decision process with respect to each application. Those cases get called in the order in which they appear on the agenda and for which an applicant and or their representative is still present. So if the applicant for the first case on the agenda has left, but the applicant for the second case is still present, we would take the second case first. We would then take the next case as it appears on the agenda for which an applicant is present until we've decided all the cases for which applicants or their representatives remain present. Then we'll go back to the top of the agenda and go down and take the cases in the order they appear on the agenda for the applicants that have left. If you're interested in knowing what the decision is on a particular case, you can watch it on TV at home after you leave, or you can contact the Planning and Zoning Department tomorrow morning after 9 o'clock. During the portion of the meeting following the break, there is no more opportunity for public input. The only comments and discussion that will take place are among the members of the board unless we have a question or solicit input from someone. Then, of course, we make an exception if we're interested in it. But that's the way that works. So, without further ado, we will start in on our agenda.
ZB 1510-1, upon the matter of request by Louis Giordano Jr. for area variance to maintain a front entranceway with less than required front setback on premises 452 Pemberton Road in an R2 residential district.
Hi, Judy and Louis Giordano.
452 Pemberton Road.
Yes, sorry.
If you raise your right hands, do you swear or affirm that everything you say tonight will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Okay.
We added a front entranceway to our home that goes the span of the house. And it has two steps, one when you first come up to it, and then halfway through another step. We have a disabled child at home, and this made it easier for her to get in to the house. We had, over the winter, we had ice damming, which damaged the front of our house, and we had a tiny little, what was
Just a
that, cement step that
Not accessible for her.
she was not able to access the front of the house, so we figured it was time to make that change.
In your application, you also indicated that if it's necessary, it can be converted to a ramp.
Yes,
Is that to
yes,
do with the distance of the steps?
yes,
It goes from a 2-foot height down to a 1 foot down to the driveway. So it gives us the opportunity to slope it out.
And there's a
further.
longer
There is.
distance between
Correct.
the steps, right?
correct.
So you could cover that over into a ramp, and then at
Yes.
some point, the ramp could be taken back and the steps would still be there, right?
Yes,
Okay. It's an interesting design. It's pretty thought.
with forethought.
Yes.
And it's going to happen sooner than we thought, so we're going to end up having to do that, not too far in the distant future. I have two letters from neighbors that couldn't come today, and I have neighbors here that did come.
Okay. All right. And I think most of us probably went out and saw it. We usually do. It looked like you did a nice job on it as well. And you said that when it dries, you're going to be
We're going to paint, yeah.
do some kind of covering to tie it into the house a little more.
We're going to seal it up. It have to be sealed too.
Yeah, we have to wait until the spring because of the wood has to dry or
It's gonna
something
cure.
like that, so we're gonna paint the railing and the base of it to match the
Hard to
house.
think of wood drying in December and January around here.
Yeah, it has to do
But
with,
I understand that's what you have to do. so.
Pressure treated part's got to cure.
Yeah.
I have a question. You said in your letter that after you had gotten the project underway, it came to your attention that you were going to need a variance. Did the town, had you applied for a permit yet first in the town?
It was,
an error of the construction.
the contractor was doing it for us, said because it wasn't attached to the home itself, that there was no permit needed. So I worked with Donna and John Nitty. He came over and showed us what needed to be done, and we put it up to code for him.
Okay, so you got bad advice.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Any other questions?
It does look nice, by the way.
Oh,
Thank you.
It does.
All right. Seeing no other questions from the board, anyone here to speak in favor of this application? Step right up, sir.
My name is Dario Armanini. I live at 460 Pemberton Road, which is next door to the house that they put the front on. I think it looks very nice, it's attractive, and it blends in very well with the house. My main concern with it was for the daughter. I'd seen her in the wintertime try and get on that concrete slab there to try and get out, to get into the driveway, and I worried about her. So I'm glad they did something, and what they say about the front, where you can put a ramp in there very easily, that is so. Because I mentioned it to Lou, I said, gee, no problem with a ramp. He said, no, we already thought of that. Because I think eventually it's going to come to that. So I am very much in favor of it for no reason but for the daughter. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak in favor of the application? Does anyone wish to speak in opposition to the application? Anyone like to talk to us about it? Seeing none, we'll close the
Chairman?
hearing with respect.
Before we close the hearing, might we get copies of those letters from the neighbors?
Oh, yes, if you could just give them to Donna, we'll make them a part of the record. You want to read them in? Go ahead.
Sure. One letter is by Tina Bryson of 461 Pemberton Road, saying that she is unable to attend, but she thinks it looks beautiful and she has no complaints. And the second is Nancy Stewart, saying that she believes it's a great improvement and she has no objection at 469.
We'll close the hearing with respect to that matter and move on to the next case.
ZB 1510-2, upon the matter request by Charles and Jane Valone for area variances to install a front yard ornamental fencing with less than required front setback facing the street and exceeding maximum permitted linear footage facing the lakefront on premises 340 Rock Beach Road in an R1 residential district.
Yes, my name is Chuck Valone, 340 Rock Beach Road.
If you could raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that everything you say tonight will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay. Before you get underway, I have a question for you. When I went by there yesterday morning, I noticed that the sign that lets your neighbors know that there's an application pending,
Yes,
instead of being in the area where it would be freestanding and clearly visible,
yes.
was back up against a stone wall and had two security, what appeared to be security alarm company medallions that were blocking it. Is that the way it's been the whole time?
Yes, yes. I didn't have anything to put it in the front itself.
We ran out of wire hooks, and
And
that
I
was our
didn't have any
fault.
wire hooks or
Oh,
anything.
okay, you didn't have a wire hook.
No, it was our
Now
fault.
I understand.
I didn't have
So
any
we
way
can
to.
get some more wire hooks so we don't run into that problem, because I was not happy that
Yeah.
it was hard to see.
I didn't have anything in which to secure it, so it was facing it and certainly couldn't stand it. So that's,
In the words of Gilda Radner, then, never mind.
okay, all right, thank you.
All right.
Thank you. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Okay, so we are just seeking approval for a variance to put up two sections, two 8-foot sections, 3.5-foot fence in the area that we cut out of the macadam. In addition to that, we also are seeking a variance, I guess, for the length of the fence on the lake side of the property, which will separate the empty lot from our lot. So we're just going straight back. We have two small dogs, and we just wanted to contain them in some way, and that seemed to be the way to do it. That would be a 4-foot fence. And we just request permission from the board if that's possible.
Okay.
So that particular variance is not for height, that's just for the linear footage on the side, on the east side of the house, right?
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct.
And then we're also looking for you're putting a 20-foot piece of fence up by the street, right?
Yes, two 8-foot sections that comes down at, we initially put 20 foot, but after cutting out the macadam, we felt that two separate 8-foot sections, 3.5 foot high, would be more attractive.
And you're gonna put some you're gonna dig up the cement and put some grass?
The cement has already been dug up. We already did cut the macadam out.
Okay.
We filled it with soil, mulch, and landscaping. And we just left a little spot in between for the fence,
Right.
if possible.
It looks nice, by the way.
Thank
Do
you.
we know if the,
Except for the sign, right?
Other than, well, the sign's not your fault.
Okay.
The sign is wiped out.
do we know if the, and we're looking for a 3-inch setback, right?
Correct,
If
yeah.
That's what I'm reading, right?
Yes, that's,
That'd be from the, what's, not a curb, it's a drain, from the water,
that's correct.
from the gutter.
Yes, that's correct. I guess we're only going, my property ends about 3 feet from the gutter.
Right.
And then we had talked with the commissioner, and he had given us a verbal, if you will, to place the fence 3 inches from the end of my property, which actually would still be 3 feet away from the gutter itself.
Okay, so, all right, because I misunderstood it based on the map here. I thought you were trying to put the fence right up against the gutter.
Oh, no,
So
no,
it
sir.
is still set back
Correct.
3 feet from the gutter.
Yeah, it's actually going to be almost 3 feet, wherever the town property
Line stops.
intrudes on my property, I guess we're going 3 inches
Yeah,
back
okay.
from that.
All right.
So we're still going to be at least 2 to 3 feet, if not more, from the gutter itself.
Very good, okay. I wondered whether the road crew would have a.
Yeah, yeah.
Plus you.
Plus, my fence would probably be demolished, right?
Right, the plow
right.
would skin it, you know.
Yeah,
times a
we're
year.
going to be at least that distance away from the
All right,
gutter.
okay.
It won't be understood.
Any other questions or comments?
Yeah, just a quick one. The fence itself is going to be like a black wrought iron type of fence?
It's actually going to be bronze, it'd be a bronze color to kind of match the architectural lights that are on the garage. So it won't be black per se, it'd be a bronze.
Yeah, that'll look nice, yeah.
Thank you.
It seems to me that on that street, pedestrians largely walk on the street. Is that correct? So the pedestrians, people who are walking
Yes,
or
that's
whatever.
correct.
So this fence and other materials wouldn't hinder, wouldn't really be a market change from where people are walking currently.
Correct. Oh, yes, correct. It will be far enough away from the street itself, yes.
Any other questions or comments? All right, is there anyone here who wishes to speak in favor of this application? Anyone here who wishes to speak in opposition? Anyone who'd like to talk to us about it? Seeing none, we'll close the hearing with respect to that matter and move on to the next case on the agenda.
ZB 1510-3, upon the matter of request by Phil Hart, acting as agent from Joe Maramo, for an area variance to construct a 14-foot by 13-foot sunroom with less than required rear setback on premises 160 Brooktrout Lane in an R1 residential district.
Phil Hart, 123 Dispatch Drive, acting as the agent for Joe Marmo. Joe had contacted Patty
Need you to
Onclose.
raise your right hand.
Okay,
You swear or affirm that everything you say tonight will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I do.
Okay.
We've been contracted by Joe to modify his existing deck, cut away the part that is past the side of the house, modify the center of what is the existing part that will now become the end to build the sunroom. The right-hand side where the hot tub was, or is being removed, strip that out, put in all new decking, railing system to really dress it up back there. The house is a pre-existing non-conforming in that when it was constructed, it was set back extra deep because there is a little creek that runs through there. There's a ponding area up, and rather than have the creek run under the house, it runs underneath the driveway. So that put the house in a rear setback situation from the get-go. So the existing deck, the neighbors are used to the setback that's there with them using that. And as fate would have it, Joe's engaged to a lovely woman who is extremely allergic to bees and wasps. So they're trying to avoid that situation, which they ran into last year with a EpiPen and get the urgent care real fast. I do have a letter from the neighbor directly behind them It's just one sentence. I do not have any problem with the sunroom being added on, at 160 Brook Trout Lane, the house of Joe Marmo, Gene Ucci, and I'll give that to you for the record.
Okay.
So this picture here is close to what the sunroom will look like,
Yeah, the size, everything about it, the height.
but not what it's going to sit on.
No, that is an elevated deck. His deck is
Threw me
about
for a
2
minute.
foot, about 2 foot
Doesn't
above
look
grade.
familiar. But that base will be where the hot tub is now, right?
The hot tub will be, from looking at the house, the hot tub area is still going to be on the right. The sunroom is going to start at the edge of the house, just off the corner post, and then where the sliding glass door, cover the sliding glass door.
So you don't have to put foundation,
We have to do modifications because the deck was built back when you could cantilever the footer, so we're adding supports to the front, but that's it, just pier footers at the load points.
sounds good,
Yeah, nothing major.
How do you add those? You pull up decking and go down?
You dig at an angle, pour, and then backfill.
Oh.
It's, I get a few cuts on my knuckles from,
So you have to crawl under there to put them in there?
yeah.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments from the board? Is there anyone here to speak in favor of this application? Anyone here to speak in opposition to this application? Anyone who'd like to talk about it? Close the hearing with respect to that case. Move on to the next case.
ZB 1510-4, upon the matter request by Christopher Brett for area variances to construct a two-story addition and cupola with less than rear side setback and exceeding maximum permitted height, a two-story enclosed staircase with less than required side setback, and a second-story balcony with less than required side and bay front setbacks on premises 1336 Bay Shore Boulevard in an R2 residential district.
I'm Chris Brett, and I live at 1336 Bayshore Boulevard.
Raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that everything you say tonight will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay, thank you.
So, I'm doing some renovations to my house at the Bay, and I think you all have copies of the setbacks I'm looking for. One of them being in the highlighted yellow areas of my survey map. The first one is an 8 by 10 foundation, and that's the only part of the home that the footprint's changing. And then if you look on the north side of the house, I am requesting variance for a fireplace, which is just it's a cantilevered floor joist for a gas fireplace, and it's no more than, it's approximately about 5 foot wide, sticks out 2 feet, and it has a little shed roof. It doesn't go past the soffits of the house. I don't know if you've seen some of those on the newer homes that they construct. And then down from that, along the north side of the house also, is a cantilevered staircase. Cantilevering the floor joist is 2 feet to accommodate a staircase on in the house. It's a turn staircase. In other words, you go up, hit a landing, turn, and go up the other way. It's kind of nautical in the design and whatnot, and it provides adequate room for me around the island that to have an open floor plan. I basically needed that 2 feet to get a little more room around my island and whatnot.
So the actual staircase is going to be not 2 feet wide, it's actually going to be inside the house as it stands now. It'll be...
Correct. It's just protruding from the existing house 2 feet
Right, okay.
to get the extra space in the living area.
Okay, you can see it on the floor plan, and the inside
Can you-
floor plan, it's, the landing is actually the part that's gonna be protruding.
Correct,
Right.
like 2 feet of the landing. The landing will probably be 3
Right.
feet, and, yes.
Okay. Yeah, I thought that was gonna be the most narrow staircase I've ever seen.
Yeah, right, that
Right,
being 2 feet.
got it.
Go up sideways, we could make it. And then towards the east end of the house, highlighted in yellow, I have, seeking a front setback. This, I guess the bay is considered the front of the house. So I'm, requesting a front and side setback to construct a balcony coming off of the main structure of the house with a roof system over it. It's open, there's no walls to it, it just has a roof structure over it. Now, in all of these, the house is, I guess you could consider non-conforming on the north side of the house when it was built. Because the setback, the existing setback now is 3.2 feet at the, that would be the northwest corner. And at the northeast corner, it's 4 feet. So the house was never properly built in whenever it was constructed. However, in speaking with some of my neighbors, and I have survey work that's gonna go on down at my house, that I guess the surveyors that come down there, there's no original monuments. Back in the 20s, they brought a lot of fill in down there, and they buried some of these monuments. So, I mean, as far as the survey maps go, these could be off as much as 2 feet. In speaking with some of my neighbors, they say. If you look down in the left-hand corner of the survey map, my neighbor's deck is onto my property by about 1.5 feet, which makes me question whether the survey maps are accurate down there. It's very hard, it's because it's, there's such a steep slope and elevation drops so much. I don't know how accurate they actually are, but for what it's worth.
The rebar that it indicates that it makes reference to is running through the boundary line, was that set by your surveyor, or was that there?
Well, that's just it. They set it. This most recent survey, that surveyor set those rebars. Whether there were any down there, and in speaking with my neighbors, how they said they brought in a lot of fill back in the 20s and 30s. They probably buried the original monuments. So I have a surveyor. I'm presently trying to purchase the land in front of my house from that lot line to the water's edge. I have a letter here that I sent to the state. I'm not, you gotta give me a...
So these,
So the surveyor that comes down there, I'm gonna have him tell him to be right on the ball with this as best you can. Because it's kind of a question is whether these are accurate or not. But back to my original point, the house, as it sets and is from this survey map, it looks as though it wasn't built with the 5-foot setback.
so what you're indicating is that where it says approximate location of east line of subdivision lots, from there to the bay is fill? That was filled in at some point?
From speaking with my neighbors, he said that there was a lot of fill brought in there back. It used to be cattails down there and whatnot. So, I mean, I can't say accurately. I wasn't around then.
Well, no, I've run into it before with people who fill in portions of water, bodies of water. They put up walls and then they fill it in, and then they build on it and think that it's okay, and that what they've done is taken land from the state. So I wasn't aware that had taken place on Irondequoit Bay too.
Yeah, I'm,
Apparently it did.
yeah, you see where the lot line is.
Yeah,
Yeah, so
a lot
currently,
more value that way.
I'm trying to purchase that from that lot line to the water's edge. Some of my neighbors have done it,
From the state?
yes.
Yeah, okay.
So I have that in the works, and my surveyors has to send in a map to the state, but I just want to see, I want him to be, told him, John, be as accurate as you can, because I want to see if the survey may be off a foot or whatnot. Anyways, so back to that front setback, we'll call it, for the two-story balcony. I had, in 1998, I think you have a survey map that's highlighted with a pink marker. And that's a walkout basement, and I had that, all the approvals and permits for that. I constructed the walkout, but did not put the deck on top of it, which in my current plans, that same deck is on my plans. So it was approved, I just never constructed the deck. And currently now, I just want to raise a roof up over that and have a second-story balcony. So when we're living there and it rains, we can go outside and I can smoke my cigars and not get rained on. So I have, within 200 feet of the house, I spoke with all my neighbors, and I think you also have that piece of paper. I met and discussed the renovations I'm doing. And so I got signatures 200 feet on each side of me to the south and north, with the exception of there's one property that's vacant down there, and I never see nobody's living there. And the couple that are blank, they're beyond 200 feet, and I just didn't get a chance to meet with them to discuss it. But my immediate neighbor to the north, which is Bob Whalen, he has no objections to it. And Paul Marosco, who is my immediate neighbor to the south, has no objections, nor do the rest of the people within 200 feet.
Can I ask a
So-
question? How close is Bob Whalen's house to his lot line?
On his north side,
No, on his south side.
on the south side, I would say the house itself is probably, I'm going to say 25 feet, maybe, 20, 25
So
feet.
it's not tight up against your,
No.
all right.
And me and Bob, I mean, take it for what it's worth, we're very good friends. He cuts my lawn, I trim his hedgerows, we get along
That's good.
very well. So, now his opposite side of his house is tight to the north side he's tight to his lot line.
Right.
The other part of your variance request was for a height
Oh, yes, I'm sorry.
for the cupola.
For the cupola I'm putting on top, correct.
And without the cupola, is a variance required?
For the height,
Yes.
Yeah, it did, remember?
without the cupola? I guess,
You only get 24 feet high, and you said that the house was 26
okay, then I guess we would.
2 foot 4
and
inch
4
variance
inches.
without the cupola.
So you're talking about going from 2 foot 4 inches for what's there, right? In other words, the 2 foot 4 inches is there now, right? Donna?
Can you repeat that? What was your question?
26 feet, the 2 foot 4 inch variance that he's asking for without the cupola, that's already there.
No, because he's doing a second story, right, Chris? That
Well, the existing house is, I would, what is the height on
on the sheet here,
the allowable height is
24 to the
24
midpoint.
feet. As the house currently sits, I would say it's under the 24 feet.
So you're raising up.
We're going higher, yes.
Okay.
The roof lines, they're a steeper pitch roof line, and I have a taller ceiling in the first floor. But the cupola is the, as you can see from the, do you have a blueprint?
Yeah, he gave a little drawing there.
Is it what I need the height variance for? And I guess, yes, the main structure also. I mean, to me, I don't know, I mean, 24 feet, is it? Is the allowable? It
Right.
doesn't seem very generous in any type of construction. And also, yeah, I would imagine some of the neighbors are already in, I guess, I don't know if it's violation, but, you know, their house is higher than mine right now.
Actually, I think we,
That's my concern.
Actually, there's a house that's at 1370 Bay Shore. They have the same type of cupola, and I mean, I imagine they got their height variance
Right.
because from their grade, they're actually 3 stories plus the cupola.
I think I'm familiar with that house. I think they've been in front of us a number of times.
Chris and Kelly Lagozio, if I'm saying that correctly. I mean, it's a very attractive house, and it adds character to the neighborhood, and, you know,
And Chris, if you measured it from the other side of the house, the street side, it would meet the 24. It's just measuring from the bay side, it's like the grade changes it. That's why it's a little higher.
Because it slopes
Right, if
down
you see
to
the
the shore,
picture, just a little bit. But if you took the measurement from the other side of the house,
measured from the street level.
from the
it's
street,
negative,
it would be,
Right.
it would be
Below the
fine.
street level,
But we measured, the code says measured from the front.
right, yeah.
So-
I'm just curious about the cupola. Is it strictly for aesthetic reasons, or does it serve any other purpose?
actually, I like the looks of it,
That would be aesthetic.
and, okay, aesthetically, and also, actually down in this house in the early spring, when it's warm outside, my house is kind of on the cool side, so in putting a fan up in this cupola, I'm hoping to draw in the warm air during the early springs and circulate it up through the house to, you know, get some of that warm air inside. It's always been you know, you walk from 70 degrees outside and 60 in my house. So I'm hoping this acts as a, you know, a natural flow of air, bringing the outside air through the house for me, and also keeping it cool. So there is some functionality to it, besides the aesthetics that I also wanted.
So if you had, let's say that we were to decide that the 26 4-inch would be okay, but 3310 is pushing it beyond where we're willing to go, how does that affect your plan?
3310 takes me there. Well, it's
Essentially,
it's
removing
basically
the
going to eliminate it.
Right.
It's going to eliminate it. So, and again, the neighbor 4 or 5 down has one that's, you know, much higher than mine. And I imagine that he got approval for it.
the question I have is
I just like the, I mean, I like the looks of it, but I'm looking forward to drawing in that warm air and, you know, and also keeping the house cool, and I maybe won't have to run air conditioning.
the road, up where your driveway is, the road, how much, if you had to estimate it, and I know it's got to be up there, but how much higher is it than the roof line right now, or the new roof line is going to be? Is it going to,
How much higher is,
because, for instance, the cupola that we approved down the street a few years back, I mean, if you're standing in the road, it's almost at eye level. So it's not like it's obstructing anybody's view, and that's, like, if you were driving by the road, if you look out toward your house, is the cupola going to be above it, or it looks to me like it's going to be at eye level?
I would
Because
say,
your house sits down the hill.
Yes, it's, yeah, 42 steps down the hill.
Well, that's my point. That's my point exactly. So even though you're showing it from the west side, you're showing a 32 feet height, you're really not, because from the west side of the foundation of the house, the hill goes up to the road, for, like you said, 42 steps. So in building this house, I can't see that the cupola is going to obstruct anything.
No, if I was standing up, I would say if I'm standing on the road at that level, look at my house, I would say, yeah, the cupola is not,
Not going to.
it might be a
Right
little
now-
higher
right
than
now-
the road.
Right now, you're looking down on your house from the road.
Correct,
Right, okay. That
correct.
answers my question.
But standing from the road, I would say the cupola is maybe a little bit higher than the road.
Right.
It's
Kinda
almost
the way
like
down
it'll
the
be at eye level, like you said. That almost makes sense.
And there's no houses across the street from you.
No.
Not there.
They're up on the hill, but they're way up top.
Yeah, they're way up there.
Any other questions or comments from the board? Is there anyone here that wishes to speak in favor of this application? Anyone here that wishes to speak in opposition to this application? Anyone who'd like to talk to us about this application? Seeing none, we'll close the hearing with respect to this matter and move on to the next case on the agenda.
Thank you.
ZB 1510-5, upon the matter request by Linda Kurtz for an area variance to install a 6-foot-high wood fence in the side yard exceeding maximum permitted height on premises 16 Angelus Drive in an R2 residential district.
Hello, I'm Linda Kurtz, my husband Terrence Kurtz,
Terrence Paul Kurtz.
16 Angelus Drive.
You'd raise your right hands. Do you swear or affirm that everything you say tonight will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Yes.
I have pamphlets for you that I didn't get to you earlier. It's the letter of intent and the original survey. There's also pictures of other homes in Culver Meadows that have already gotten this variance. So we're going to fence in the backyard, mainly for this little girl, because she runs all over the place. So we're doing the 6-foot fence, and on the side of the house facing the north, unfortunately, our dining room is there, which is our only table, it's kitchen dining room. That window faces the driveway right next door, the neighbors. They have 2 lovely dogs. Their dogs bark, our dogs bark, they talk through the window, and it's fine. Some of the neighbors aren't too happy about it, but we try to keep that down. But it's mainly for privacy and the safety of the dog. And we thought aesthetically, have that go all the way to the front of the house and across the little, it's going to be probably 6 feet or 7.5 feet in the front gate. Now, if you're on the street, there's a huge pine tree, which you can see pictures of. So you're really not even going to see the fence from there. And I talked to all of our neighbors on the north, south, east side, and the west across the street. The one behind us on the east side, I talked to him through a letter because he's a nurse and he works like 13 hours a day and he's never home to catch. But he had no objection. Everybody else has no objection either. So other than that, I think it's pretty simple and straightforward.
Who owns the grill, the cooker?
In the backyard, he
Yeah.
does. The one in the picture is our neighbors.
Oh,
Yeah, and he
That's
does
what I was
time,
referring to.
yeah, he sometimes grills there and we close the window so it doesn't come in.
that's the close spot, that's really the issue.
It is, yeah, it's really close. And it's their access to their backyard, and they have a pool backyard, they go through that way, and, sometimes we're eating and we say, hi, how's it going, But they're very nice people, we have no problems with them.
And the fence, when you put the fence in, it's not going to impede their access to the backyard at all?
No.
What is a basket weave fence as opposed
Oh,
to?
it's the wooden fence like in the picture where one goes here and one goes there and looks like a basket instead of a straight stockade fence. So
Okay.
it's like fencing finished on both sides.
Okay.
Oh, that's what it is. I thought it was one where it wove in and out,
Yeah.
Yeah.
going up and down. I think that's a basket.
Well, this is the one I'm
There's
talking
a
about.
different one for the, you're talking about the two-sided one with the post that runs
Yes.
down the middle.
Yes.
Okay.
Looks like a basket to me.
And the letter is signed by Tom Dapier from 26 Angelus Drive, Teresa and David Anderson at 9 Angelus Drive, and Kathleen
Lazaro,
Lazaro at 60 Brower Road.
yes.
They're the neighbors to the south?
Yes. Her house is on Brower, the back of her yard. Butts up to
They're the
our
ones that
side
we
yard.
approved the addition on that comes out
Exactly.
towards Angelus Drive, right? Okay.
It's
does look
beautiful
nice.
inside. She
Excuse
did
me,
a
the
lovely job.
the variance area is only on one side. We're not going to
Right.
go all the way up.
It's just on the north side, and
Just,
you only need the variance from the back of the house to the front of the house,
Right.
right?
It seems like on the survey map that this section of fence that needs a variance is, will not be flush with the front of the house. Is that right? It be
I was-
stepped back a little bit?
I was going to bring it back because I think aesthetically it looks a lot better than butting up.
I agree.
How far back are you bringing it?
Oh, not,
Because in
very,
granting the variance, if we grant the variance, we need to specify where the variance is.
it's going to go approximately a foot from the house in the front, and it's going to extend about 3 feet past the house where the bushes are. And where the bushes are, we have very high bushes there. We're putting that's going to be a see-through fence because it's all green. I don't want to see all fence all the way. I like the green.
And we don't want to kill the bushes.
Well, you're talking about
Variance
going
itself.
east.
Yes, but the variance itself
And that's not
that
part
you're
of the
talking
variance.
about, no, that's
No.
not part.
The variance ends at the back of your house, so you
Exactly.
can go, you could go further all the way out to your
Right.
rear lot line and,
Right. But we were just going
Okay.
to go to the
Right.
green space.
okay, all right.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments from the board?
The neighbor that's, you could see through the window there, are they okay with it? Have you-
Yes, that's
Yeah.
Tom
Okay.
and Donna.
It's kind of hidden behind the tree.
Anyone here to speak in favor of this application? Anyone here to speak in opposition to the application? Anyone who'd like to talk to us about the application? Seeing none, we'll close the hearing and move on to the next case.
Thank you.
Thank you for your consideration.
Very welcome.
ZB 1510-6, upon the matter request by Joshua Donahue for a special use permit to harbor hens with coop pursuant to Section 23570 of Town Code on premises 2407 St. Paul Boulevard in an R1 residential district.
Hi, I'm Francesca Donahue, my husband Josh. We are the residents at 2407 St. Paul Boulevard.
If you could raise your right hands, do you swear or affirm that everything you say tonight will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Yes.
Okay, in our original application packet, we have our letter of intent along with some photos of our property. Also a couple articles about, benefits of having hens at a residence.
Before you get to that, I have a question about the sign. Did you also run into the no wire?
Yeah, no, it was
Problem?
up there until Friday, Saturday with the windstorm, and one of the wires actually broke off. But it was there until like about Friday or Saturday.
Okay,
We
all right.
chased it down.
because I noticed it wasn't there yesterday morning.
Yes.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, that's okay. So yeah, in our original packet, we had some articles about, the benefits of having hens in a residential property, why we would like to have them. We've spoken to our neighbors to the north and south side, which is the only neighbors that we have in the immediate. We back to the trail in the woods of Seneca Park, and then our next nearest is across St. Paul Boulevard. We do have a kind of like an unusually large lot in the town, about 1/3 of an acre, so we do have plenty of room. We're not looking for an overly large structure, just enough to house them with the amount of square footage that they say is ideal for the amount, and then an attached screen run to give them space to get out of the coop and do what they need to do.
How many hens are you planning on having on the property? Let me rephrase that. How many hens are you asking us to approve on the property?
Well, probably we're looking to do 6, but we don't know if we would get that amount initially. They lay eggs probably 1 per day to every other day, and then their peak laying years are their first 1 to 2, and then they kind of die off with their production levels. So we would maybe start with like 3 or 4, then increase 1 to kind of counteract, the decline of what the ones that we had currently were doing.
Have you, in looking into this, have you looked at the many applications that we've had in the last few years for chickens and hens on residential properties in town?
I haven't specifically in the town of Arundecoy, but I have done numerous research online. He's grown up with them in the southern tier, so he's familiar with their care. But
The reason I ask that is that we seem to have a growing proliferation of chickens wanting to move into town and occupy backyards so that people can get eggs in the morning and have all the other benefits that come from chicken manure and everything else that we read about. And we have had experience through these applications, to my knowledge and recollection, and I'm open to any correction if I'm wrong, but I don't believe that we've approved any more than 4 at a time.
Okay.
All right? And we've asked to have inspections from the town. We've asked to have annual certifications from veterinarians.
Oh, definitely.
That the chickens are free from any illness or disease. We've asked for explanations of how you're going to minimize, and I'm especially concerned because you back up to the Seneca Park Trail, how you're going to minimize the attraction by chickens of other animals that might be attracted by them and view them as being a dinner
Right.
as opposed to a source of eggs.
Right. To address some of your concerns, our current vet that we have, Eastridge Animal Hospital, I have verified with them. They do, they will service chickens.
They've come up frequently. They must have a whole chicken
They
wing
do,
or something.
yeah, they do kind of all sorts of different animals, lizards, everything like that.
No pun intended.
Right.
As for the structure, it's not going to be like one of those prefab kits from like Tractor Supply that are kind of little rinky-dinky. It is going to actually be like a shed-like structure with an actual door, windows for ventilation. So it is going to be very secure, and as for the run, it will be kind of like a wooden structure with chicken wire for screening so that it's it's harder for like raccoons and anybody to kind of like dig through it. It's a very stronger wire as compared to like chicken wire, as they would call it.
How about down below the ground surface?
It will.
First application, the reason I ask is because the first application that we had, which was very detailed and specific and put together, and they'd done a lot of research on it, they were going 2 feet down with chicken wire. and
Right, yeah, you
other
should bury
things.
it into the ground, and if you can, kind of like go into the structure so it's almost like boxed in.
All right, so you're planning on doing that
Correct,
as well?
yes.
Okay.
I don't want to see any dead chickens.
Another possibility, and this may come next year, obviously, but we may do an actual fence to fence
Around
in
the
our
property.
yard itself.
Okay.
So that may come later on.
If I can ask a couple questions, what kind of chickens are you going to get, and where are you going to get, from where will you get them?
Buff Orpington chickens are the ones that we've been kind of researching. They're a bigger breed. They're good egg layers, and they're kind of a sturdier breed. And we were looking at a place in Macedon, I forgot their name, but it's a local, it's not a hatchery.
Yeah, I mean, how noisy are those chickens compared to other ones?
They're not, hens in general aren't very noisy. It's the roosters. We're not looking to have any roosters. They'll make very minimal noise. The only thing that they may do is they say when they lay their eggs, they may do like a little song, like they'll chirp or cluck, I guess, a little bit, but just maybe like little clucks here and there.
I mean, I'll just say this, I'm sure someone else might share my thoughts. Based on other applications we've received, this does not seem to be nearly as detailed as other ones. I mean, you've got what look like computer graphics of what's going to be
those were
built.
examples of what our structure is aiming to look like.
Yeah, but I mean, we've seen specific floor plans, drawings, where the items are coming from, how big the, the fence is going to be, how far underground it's going to be. And I see a picture of what we want it to look like, but I don't see any plans for how we're going to get there. And I don't see anything to make me feel confident that the structure will actually achieve the purposes that you're saying.
I
it
could
would.
definitely include plans. I just put pictures in there to kind of give an idea of what we were looking to do without knowing if it was going to be approved. Most of the plans that I was looking at online, you would have to purchase, so I was trying to reduce my investment initially before getting too deep and have it not be approved.
You mentioned that you back up to Seneca Park.
The start of the trail and the wooded area prior to the zoo.
But the property that you back up to is owned by the county of Monroe, right?
Correct.
So the county is your neighbor?
Yes.
Okay. Because our council's raising an issue as to whether or not, since the action that we would be taking would adjoin county property, whether or not the county planning department needs to give an okay to this before we could grant the variance.
Okay.
Do you know if the county property that you back up to, is that county parkland, or do you know if it's dedicated?
I don't
as
even know if
parkland?
it's really considered. There's a walking trail, and if you were coming south on St. Paul, there's the entrance of the zoo, that kind of like windy entrance road.
Mm-hmm.
That's what's beyond the trail. So I don't know if it's the full-fledged park of it, or...
'Cause I think the trail is still part of
Irondequoit?
Irondequoit.
I'm not sure.
I think you might be right. The trail used to be.
The trail's the old railroad tracks, right?
Yeah.
It starts back by Versailles almost.
Along those lines, looking at some of the things that may have changed since we've got into the chicken business, I know this summer New York State banned all chickens from the state fair because of their concerns over the spread of bird flu. It's been very heavy in the Midwest. All chickens and other fowl were also banned from all 45 county fairs within New York State as well. Again, because of the concern over the bird flu, and they were trying to stop it from spreading here. I guess I'm not sure that we're helping that situation by approving more chickens here.
The bird flu that I know of has not been here locally, and where we are going to be getting the chickens from is a local, farm from Macedon. They're not being shipped in from a different state where we don't know if they do have an outbreak of bird flu or know definitely where they get their chickens, how they treat their chickens. I can physically go to the farm, see how they treat them, what I'm getting, take them to the vet, get them, vaccinated, checked out, and, comply with any certification or checks that the town would want to do.
If I'm not mistaken, I was just at the Apple Fest in Hilton this past weekend, and I know they have a petting area for animals, and I think they had chickens there, and I think during our 4th of July festival, we had some type of petting zoo or petting thing out front of the town hall here, and I'm pretty sure there were chickens there.
Yeah, well, I'm just telling you what they did. They banned all breeds of fowl, including chickens, pigeons, turkeys, pheasants, and so forth, because of the concern over the spread of the bird flu. Granted, it hasn't hit here, and what their state was trying to do was to avoid it coming in to New York State or our area in general. It's particularly, they said, this strain of the flu is particularly a serious threat to all chickens and has a high death rate within North America when it does get into a herd of chickens. So that's just another concern, I think, that we should consider here. if our own state doesn't want to have chickens at the fairs, all county fairs, do we really want to encourage more in our backyard?
A lot of it, I think, may just be a precaution. These, I guess, vendors who are bringing the animals to the fairs or with their produce, that you may not know where they're getting them from or how they're treating them. So I think it's more of like a precautionary, endeavor that they're just trying to avoid any issues that could potentially happen from.
Well, from a state standpoint, it would be easy enough to say that they had to be medically approved before they could come in. The state's approach was to ban them altogether because of the level of concern that they had over it. At the same time, the CDC also came out with another warning about backyard chickens, particularly if you have small children that tend to hold them and kiss them and everything else, and the spread of salmonella. And again, there's quite an article the CDC put out. Again, I think that's July, middle of July.
Right, we don't have any small children, and salmonella, if you keep up on your hand washing and the cleanliness of your area, and that's something that could be easily avoided. We did also include a letter from the neighbor to the south of us with her approval, as well as our neighbor to the north who planned on coming, but I don't see her here. But we do have this letter and then just an aerial shot of what our property kind of looks like, but we did include a couple of those in our packet as well.
Can you talk to the board for a minute about the proposed coop itself? In your letter of intent, it says an 8x12 or less, and then a screened-in run. What would you say that the maximum size of this whole facility would be, and then what would the maximum height be as well?
I would say no taller than 8 feet for either structure. That would be more than enough room. The size of the shed structure plays into fact of how many birds would be allowed, because there's kind of like a mathematical number of how many square feet per bird should adequately be in the coop structure, and then they say there's about 10 square feet needed in an outside run per bird, so it is kind of dependent on that. But even with the the screened-in run would be no more than like a 10 by 6, and then with the same type of square footage for the inside coop, I wouldn't see anything more. Like I said, 8x12 is probably shooting a little high, maybe a 10 by 6 or a 8 by 6 for the coop structure.
And I'm assuming you wouldn't connect it to water or sewer
No,
utilities? You would
the
bring water
screened-in
there,
area
bring
would
a
be
hose.
connected to the shed structure with a little door to let them out to that, but there's going to be nothing else in there besides that, just windows for ventilation to...
No electric. So there'd be no sink for washing? Or
No,
anything?
not at all.
Council, none of those issues are before the board in terms of variances for the size or any structure.
Yeah, my intent was just to ask as far as what they're asking for as far as the facility in connection with the special permit, and if the board wanted to condition the special use permit on a maximum size structure or something to that effect.
In the past, we limited them to 4, but if one died, they couldn't replace them. Am I remembering right?
Actually, in my recollection is that we've limited them to, those who have gone ahead and rented to them first without getting the permission from us, we've limited them to no more than 4 and no replacements, so that when they go
You've got
down.
that one lady that's over by the expressway that I thought had 10 or 11 of them.
Well, and she'd had them for a while, and we told her she had to cut them back to 4 through natural attrition, and she couldn't have more than 4. So, and others I don't think we've allowed for. We've granted the original ones, and I don't think we've allowed yet for any replacement
I
chickens.
believe that's correct.
I believe that a few of them, they were ready to quit on it, though. They said they didn't want any, so we said, fine.
Well, those are the ones.
I think we specifically included the condition that it is for the life and being of the original.
The originally approved
fowl.
chickens.
I'm not looking to, go through all of it just for a hobby to have chickens. I'm actually doing it for the benefits of them, for me, myself, and my family. I myself am a big egg eater. I probably go through at least 3 to 4 a day just myself, but, again, it's just not a hobby to me. It was, to actually provide for the family in a way of going out, having the eggs, not to purchase them. We do that with gardening vegetables in the summer. I don't have to take myself to Wegmans to get my cucumbers and my peppers and just more so just being self-sufficient and kind of living off my
I don't
land.
think any of the applicants that we've approved chickens for have come in saying they wanted to do it as a hobby.
Well, some people, with little kids, how they get them at Easter time or whatnot, and kind of think of it's a little game. But
No, that's not what we've been dealing with, and the ones that we've dealt with have all indicated that they like the benefits. That's how we know so much about the benefits.
Right.
Because they tell us about all the benefits of the manure, the benefits of the eggs, how,
bugs that they eat, so on and so.
Yep, and how collegial they are and everything else. And what we're finding is that some of the ones who've had them for a while have decided that because we've limited them to the life of the existing chickens that they originally do, that when they come back and are ready, would be at the point where would need to obtain a renewal of our approval, have decided that the benefits don't outweigh the problems that come with it. All I'm suggesting to you is that what you might want to do is check with the town, find out the people that we've granted these special use permits to in the past, and talk with them about some of the practical things that they've run into, both benefits and detriments, and take them into account in doing whatever it is we tell you it's okay for you to do. All right? I have generally gone along with most of them, but I'm not unmindful of the concerns that Mr. Hammond raises either. And, it seems that we increasingly have a number of, I think we went 3 months without a chicken application on the agenda, and it seemed like a long time. But now we seem to be back. Is there a time of year that people typically get these chickens, and that explains?
We're actually end of season, so
That's what I thought.
Right, we wouldn't be able to do it. They don't start kind of hatching them again until like late January, early February. But that would be too cold to build a structure, so we're probably not until March or April where we could actually get the ball rolling and kind of start the whole process.
Mr. Chairman, I have a concern about that. Things have come up. We've mentioned a number of little things as we go along in this discussion. Not to give the applicants a tough time about this, but the concern is about the health of the area and the community. And you've heard this before, but we have put conditions on those that we've approved. Could we take a minute and just kind of list those conditions that we've used in the past, such as having them examined, I think yearly by a vet, and other things?
Right, we've asked the town to conduct to do an inspection, speak to the neighbors, look at it 6 months after it's actually up and running. We've asked, as Mr. Thomas indicated, for the annual certification from a veterinarian that's actually looked at and examined the animals.
Right.
And sends a letter saying that, they're free of any medical issues. We've required that they be immunized against diseases. We've limited the number of chickens, as I mentioned. We've limited it only to the chickens that we approve from the beginning, and no additions and no replacements. We
haven't always done that.
Have we put a time limit on when they have to come back?
I think we have. And I think we've limited it to a maximum period of time, which I think was 5 years?
Yeah, either 3 or 5.
3 or 5, something, I'm not sure. We'd have
In
to
which you would have to get another approval or
come back, right? We've had a few complaints from neighbors that they disturb their morning routines outside. We went and tried to check that out. We didn't find any problems with that, but, that's one of the things that we want you to, I think we've put conditions on when the chickens can be out in the run. Only during,
right.
Like normal daylight hours, things
Right,
like
almost
that.
like following like a noise ordinance, how you would with the town.
And we've put conditions on food storage and the construction of the actual chicken coop and
Correct.
the chicken house, hen house, whatever it is. And again, that's my main concern, is that this application doesn't really demonstrate a real mastery of the ability to harbor them safely.
A lot of them have.
Pretty sure that maybe I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure I've seen a fox in that area before. Maybe I'm losing my mind, but
I'm sure, yeah.
I'm sure I have, and that's my concern. I'm pretty sure I saw one not too long ago driving down St. Paul to go to work. And that's really my concern, is that I don't see an actual plan to get this building. So the road to chicken illness is paved with great intentions. And I keep saying, I just don't see a concrete
the
plan that
idea
these
of
chickens will be safe.
Say tabling this and give them a chance to do a little more homework and possibly come up with some plans for the coop and the run.
We could,
Good idea?
seems to me we could do two things. We have a number of options. The ones that come immediately to my mind would be, one is tabling it to a later date so they can get us detailed plans. Another is giving a conditional approval that says that the plans will be submitted to us for our approval, although I don't think we're really experts on building chicken coops.
A lot of them have
But
just
I-
been like shed kits, like whatever size, and then the plans from that, and then you can just alter
we
it for like
haven't-
a
We
nest.
haven't seen any with shed types. The ones that we've approved have all presented plans of how they were going to build their specific structure, what it was going to look like, how deep it was going to go. The other condition that comes to my mind is that we could say that the design plans have to be reviewed by and found to be acceptable by the town.
I think that
The building people are probably more equipped and better positioned to judge that than us.
I think that's true, but I think that it's not like we're granting a variance. We're giving a permit to someone to conduct an activity that is not otherwise allowed. And when we're giving a permit to someone, I'm looking at the strength of the overall application, and when there are kind of like gaping holes in the application,
Oh, yeah.
it raises the question of whether or not the applicant is in the proper position to perform the special use appropriately. So whether or not they can submit the plans after the fact and comply with that stuff, I think is a separate question from the strength of the application itself.
Well, the other option here would be to turn the application down.
Well, that's always an option.
It'd be hard to turn the applicants down based on the letter that was submitted by the neighbor saying that they're fantastic with animals. I mean, the applicants themselves, I think, appear to be people who would do a good job. It's just, you gotta,
And,
don't count.
and the other thing, as you pointed out, this is a special use permit. And we've pointed this out in other instances where when we're dealing with a variance, we're talking about allowing somebody to do something that is otherwise prohibited by the ordinance.
Correct.
Special use permit carries with it the presumption that the activity is okay, as far as the town is concerned. What they want is individualized conditions that are specific to the location where the activity and the manner in which the activity is going to be conducted, and that becomes our responsibility to impose those conditions unless the activity is inappropriate based on something in the location or the applicant. We've had instances where we've turned down applications because the yard wasn't big enough to accommodate it, and things like that. There were wild dogs running around the neighborhood that it would have, but there's also, in addition to the fox that Mr. Paulino's referred to, there have been coyotes sighted in town who've killed cats and other things, so, and there was a coyote sighting not far from my neighborhood chewing on something in a field, so.
As the applicant, would you guys be, if it would, the one idea that you came up with in tabling it, would you be, would you consider us tabling it so that you could bring back a nicer plan of the?
Oh, definitely, yes. I could purchase a set of plans for the size of structure that we'd be looking to build,
Right,
submit those plans, and we could go through the process of getting that approved in detail. This is definitely the size screened and run, how it's going to be attached to the
Right.
structure, how
Maybe
far.
talk to one or two people in town that's got up and running coops, so that then you have more answers for our board.
Yes, I definitely could have done that prior to the meeting, but when I first kind of applied for it, we talked about the building permit could come at a later time, once, it was either approved or denied, and kind of go through the steps that way, but that's not a problem to kind of structure it and,
Not to be against the free economy of going out and buying plans, but I think if you
I could even just draw, right, yeah.
take a look at some of the applications that have come to us before, it's always better to look at the ones we've approved. I think you'll find there that you'll have ample information and on what you need to do and how to go about building it. And you can probably even, since it's a public document, you can get those at no cost or little cost compared to buying plans.
Do you think you have enough information, what we've looked at in the past? Because I know you were talking about, you don't know, 4 chickens or 6, and be the size. Now you know it's going to be 4, the size of the coop you can, reduce or
Correct.
whatever.
Mhm.
The actual pictures that you show is probably the largest chicken coop we've seen. Most of them have been smaller, almost like doghouse type coops, so large doghouse type coops.
Right, after doing a lot of research and
Spend it
finding
in the
out
air.
how much room they actually should have, give them enough room to nest in their boxes, not be crowding, which would, could promote them fighting or have a reduced production in eggs. So there's kind of a bunch of things that could play a factor in their livelihood and how comfortable that they are and to make everybody happy, I guess.
I really wanted more of a walk-in shed type
Okay.
To get in to clean it easier.
Just to clean it and just maintain it better.
Easier to pick up the eggs.
If you do look at other ones, you'll see that I think most of them that we've approved do not have a walk-in. They have something that's raised at least, I think, 2 feet. So.
Off the ground, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Bob just brought up a good,
Well, yeah, I mean, when you're gonna gather the eggs, it's a whole lot easier if you can walk into the coop to find the eggs rather than have to scoot down through a little opening or something.
good idea.
I used to have chickens many years ago, so.
Aside from tabling, right, well, first off, if we table your application, I assume that's with your consent?
Yes.
The reason I ask that is because if it's without your consent, then time limitations aren't told and we have time limits. The other thing is, it's not necessary for us to vote to table it if you ask us to hold it until you're ready to come back with the other information, and then you just submit the information and it gets added to the next meeting. So would you like to do that as opposed to having us table it? Just ask us to hold it?
Oh, we could table it.
Okay, all right.
I have no problem getting plans together and submitting those and, getting an approval for that and.
Right, isn't that the two?
Yeah, so to be clear, Francesca, you're asking the board to hold the application over.
Table it, I guess.
Okay, so the chairman presented
If
two
it is
options.
approved and if,
What are
more
the
detailed.
differences, if I may be so.
Legalese, the
Yeah.
lawyers.
So the chairman presented two options. Either the board can vote as to whether to quote-unquote table the application, which would essentially hold it over to the next meeting,
Okay.
allow you to supplement it. Or the chairman offered the opportunity for you as the applicant to request that the board hold the application over. So there wouldn't actually be a vote on whether or not to do that.
I would like a vote, and then to table.
Well, the vote would be on whether or not to
To
table.
hold it over.
It wouldn't be on whether or not to approve it, because what we're indicating to you is that we'd like to see more information.
Okay.
If we took a vote and we decided we didn't have enough information, it's likely that we would say we're not going to approve it because we wanted more information. If we don't approve it, you can't apply for another permit for a year, right? But if it's tabled and we vote to table it, that's all we would vote on. If you ask us to hold it, then we don't vote on anything, and you have time to get more information to us, as much time as you'd like. If we table it, we'd be talking about it next month, whether we had information from you or not, potentially.
Okay, so we would okay.
So the question is, who's in control? If you'd like to be in control, then you can say, we'd like you to hold it, and we'll hold it, and we won't do anything.
And we would attend the next meeting and include.
Or you could come in December or January or February, whenever you were ready with everything that we've asked you for. You might not have it in
Okay.
November.
All right, yeah, we can hold it.
Okay, all right. I thought that might be what you were leaning towards, but I wanted to be sure. All right. While we're here, though, is there anyone that wishes to speak in favor of this application? Anyone that wishes to speak in opposition to this application? Anyone who would like to talk to us in general about this application, chickens in town, anything like that? Seeing none, we'll hold it until you submit information for
Okay,
us.
sounds good. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
ZB 1510-7, upon the matter of request by Carl McCloskey for an area variance to install 6-foot-high black aluminum fencing and side yard exceeding maximum permitted height on premises 54 Ordenda Drive in an R2 residential district.
My name is Kathleen Ross, and this is my husband, Carl McCloskey. We live at 54 Renda Drive,
East, right?
east.
Okay. Would you raise your right hands? Do you swear or affirm that everything you say today will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
I say east because when I drove down west and couldn't find your number, and then remembered after a while that there was an east.
So we're here to request a variance to install a 6-foot aluminum fence panels on the east side of our property, approximately 14 feet along the side of the house on the east side to the point where it will connect to an existing vinyl fence. Approximately, that side will be approximately 25 feet. The fence is an aluminum fence with see-through panels, like a wrought iron fence. The fence on the east side of the front of the house will be located behind hedges that we have, and we think it'll be barely noticeable. The fence panels along the east side of our property will be in a wooded area and also will be unobtrusive. The fence we plan to install, we think is aesthetically pleasing, and 2 of our next-door neighbors have no objections to our plan to install this fence, and they have written letters substantiating that fact, and we've enclosed those letters in the packet. Finally, in considering granting this variance, please be advised that we live at the end of a dead-end street in a very low traffic area, so we think few people will actually see this fence.
Let me ask you what, right here.
Sure.
What's the motivation to put the fence up?
The biggest motivation is that my husband suffers from an autoimmune disease, and we live in an area that's very park-like, lots of deer, and we're frankly concerned about Lyme disease. I'm concerned about my husband contracting it, and I'm concerned about any friends and family coming over that might contract it.
Now, that is a pretty heavily populated deer area, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
As I looked at this the other day, and I thought, it took me a minute to figure out, not east and west, that part I'm familiar with as a resident of Arundecoy, to our 2 Orendas, but what the pattern for these deer is, that the fence would solve or whatever, and in either case, I will tell you that I'm in favor of this fence because it's not a big variance. It will look very nice, and if it serves your purpose, that's great. But isn't there plenty of other ways the deer can get through, or may you have to go more?
No, we're doing across the back of the property, and we're doing the west side, fencing the west side over to the neighbor's fence. So the whole backyard will be fenced in.
Yes.
Got it.
We have permits for the rest of what he just described. We just need a variance for this small area.
Is a 6-foot fence sufficient to keep the deer out?
We're hoping so.
We have temporary netting up now that's 6 foot, and they don't go over it. They walk along. They've made a trail on the other side of it where they walk. They don't try to. They probably could jump over it, but they don't. They don't jump over it. They just stay on the other side and make their trail. And they lay down on the other side. We can look out the window and see them laying on the other side of this. There's flimsy netting we have up there now.
Kind of like the rope that keeps the elephant from moving, right? I'd also noticed part of your submission, you had a letter from the Scantlins at 110 Arenda Drive, and the Kents at 64 Arenda. Those are the neighbors
Yes,
on either side of you, correct?
yes.
Yes.
And they both had no objection and were in favor of it, so. Any other questions or comments from the board? Is there anyone here to speak in favor of the application? Is there anyone here to speak in opposition to the application? Is there anyone here who'd like to talk to us about it? Seeing none, we'll close the hearing with respect to this matter.
Thank you for your consideration.
You're very welcome. Have a good night. And we have one item on the table, right? Is there a motion to take case number ZB 1509-2 off the table and reopen the case for further hearing and discussion?
So moved.
All right.
Sorry, you got it.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 7 votes. Has anyone abstained? Motion carries 7 votes in favor, no opposed, no abstentions, and we are all present. So now we can call the case that we've taken off the table.
Sure. Case ZB 1509-2, request by David Lindman for an area variance to park a commercial bucket-type service truck on premises 129 Twilight Drive in an R1 residential district.
My name is David Lyman, 129 Twilight Drive.
Mr. Lyman, you were on, well, all right. You swear or affirm that everything you say tonight will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay. I was just going to remind you that you were under oath from the last time, but that works. Since we were here last, I received, and I believe all the members of the board have received, a memo from the town responding to our request for interpretations of the provisions in the code. And there were 2 interpretations that we'd asked for. The first was an explanation of whether or not a bucket truck is a construction equipment or trailer. And the second was whether or not the requirement that the occupants submit proof of ownership and vehicle weight carried with it a connotation that the vehicle had to be owned by the occupant of the home. And with respect to the first issue concerning construction, the code enforcement officer has indicated that a Time Warner bucket truck is considered construction equipment and therefore cannot be parked on residential property unless a variance is obtained. And I guess my question is for the code enforcement officer is how they came up with the conclusion that it constitutes construction equipment. Because I looked at dictionary definitions, I looked at the internet, I put in construction, I put in construction equipment. I didn't, in anything that I found, I didn't find any reference whatsoever to a bucket type truck. So it seems to me from my common experience that a bucket truck is a utility type vehicle that services properties after construction has already been completed. All of the construction references that I was able to find referenced heavy equipment that moves earth and erects buildings and things of that nature. I didn't find anything that approached anything like a bucket truck at all. So I'm curious as to how that interpretation was arrived at, if anyone can provide clarification.
You could say the same thing about a dump truck. A dump truck dumps earth.
Oh, no.
It's not necessarily a construction truck.
Well, and that may be why dump trucks are referenced separately in the code from construction equipment.
Or a box truck.
What's a box truck?
A big cube van, a big cube truck.
Oh, cube van, okay.
Cube truck. It's not technically a construction truck.
I agree.
But I think the purpose of the code is to eliminate commercial heavy trucks, and this is a.
Right, but I think the code, as I recollect, the code specifically references,
Commercial vehicle.
it specifically, the following vehicle types are prohibited: dump trucks, construction equipment / trailers, tow trucks, buses, semi-tractors and trailers, step vans, freight vans, trucks, flatbed, stake bed truck, sanitation equipment, and then the catch-all, all other vehicles exceeding any two of the following dimensions. And the only one that, according to the code enforcement officer, is applicable here is construction equipment. And maybe that's why dump trucks are referenced separately, is because they aren't necessarily construction equipment, although I would think of them as such. But, and the box truck isn't referenced.
You also had a stake body truck in there.
Right.
Which is,
Well, I'm not disagreeing
all
that
kinds
box
of
trucks may be offensive or not desirable, but I'm saying in interpreting the town code, my question is, how did you come up that a bucket truck falls within construction equipment?
Mr. Chairman, when we reviewed the situation, I think there was a general determination made that the vehicle in question was a commercial vehicle, given the size of the vehicle, given the nature of the vehicle, and that...
There's no issue that it's a commercial vehicle. We all agree on that.
Right.
How it constitutes construction equipment was my concern.
Well, I think while the code doesn't specifically prohibit a bucket truck, in our interpretation of the code, we made a determination that the vehicle in question really could closest be classified as construction equipment or a trailer, that was the definition that best fit under the code that we had to work with. And again, it was clear from our interpretation that it was a commercial vehicle that wasn't appropriate for a residential area, and we made that determination, and that was one of the factors that we used.
On the issue of whether or not it's a construction equipment or trailer, I don't think that's relevant to what we're trying to decide. I'm not sure why that question was posed, but the way I read 235-104.1 commercial vehicles, the code authorizes the use or the parking of a commercial vehicle when the 6 elements in Section D apply. And those elements include the weight, one dwelling, one vehicle per unit, personal use, no parking or storage, parking with the public highway, and occupants shall submit proof of ownership, which is actual ownership by the occupant. And my understanding and my reading of this is that commercial vehicles would be allowed if these 6 requirements are met. And in this case, the 6 requirements are not met. In addition, even if you have a commercial vehicle and the 6 requirements are met, the code also says that a dump truck still is not allowed. So you would need a variance for a dump truck, or you would need a variance for a commercial vehicle that does not meet the 6 elements.
I agree.
That's the way I understand it. So the issue that we're discussing, I think, is whether or not this applicant would need 2 variances, one for personal ownership and one for the fact that it's a construction vehicle. But either way, a variance is required.
Well,
is that correct?
Assuming that the code's reference that requires that the
occupants shall submit proof of ownership?
Yes, assuming that means that it has to be owned by the occupant, I agree with you.
Well, and on
that was the second issue, but my first question was because construction equipment, even if it meets the 6, is prohibited. So we don't even need to get into the discussion of the others if it's a piece of construction equipment. And I just don't see personally how it could possibly be classified as construction equipment, because we have instances where bucket trucks that are smaller, that are not owner-owned or occupant-owned, are being parked in driveways without any concern or any violations being cited, and they don't meet all the 6, so if if a bucket truck is construction equipment, then it doesn't matter what the size is. And I don't think that it falls within construction equipment. We can save, the next question is, does it have to be owner occupied? And that may require a variance, but the construction equipment requires a use variance because it's the storage of parking of construction equipment is prohibited. The other, with respect to the height and the 2 out of 3 that comes down later that he might have a problem with or not, would be an area variance. And the standards for the 2 are significantly different. And I'm looking for clarification on how we put bucket trucks into the classification of construction equipment trailers. I just don't see it.
Well, apart from that question, just big picture, would a use variance be required then for a commercial vehicle that does not satisfy one of the 6 elements under Section D? So would that be a use variance also?
That was a question that I had. Is that a use variance or what? And I'll defer to our retained counsel here for that.
To your question, Mr. Paulino, I would counsel the board that the code enforcement officer has made a determination as to both issues, and this zoning board of appeals has to administer the code in connection with those 2 interpretations. So the first interpretation that's been made is that this is a construction equipment or trailer. It sounds like you disagree, Mr. Chairman. And you can certainly ask for an explanation, but we have to apply the code in connection with that interpretation.
Well, if the code officer is interpreting it to be construction equipment, the applicant, by nature of the application, is appealing the determination that it's construction equipment because he's maintaining that it's not construction equipment. And we, as the zoning board of appeals, I believe, have the final determination of whether or not we accept the code officer's interpretation of the code or not. In past cases, we have been asked to deviate from, and I don't believe we have, from what the code, but I believe that
Mr. Chairman,
ultimately it's up to us, isn't it?
Well, and that's a fair point, but I think there's 2 different issues in play, and I would defer to staff on this, Mr. McCann and Ms. Ivers, that the application before the zoning board of appeals this evening is for a use variance. It's not for an interpretation of the code officer's determination. Is that correct?
The actual application was for area variance.
And then was it amended?
Well, it hasn't been officially amended yet at this point. It was upon review and request of the board that it was determined that if this truck was being defined as a construction-type vehicle and categorized in the restricted category, then it, by virtue of being restricted, this would be a use variance.
So then I would ask both staff and the board to ask the applicant if he wishes to proceed with a use variance application, or if he wishes to file an application for an interpretation of the code officer's determination.
Well, I have another question that comes up. If the parking of a bucket truck in a driveway in the town of Arundecoit requires a use variance, which is what we're being told tonight is required, then how does that affect the variances that we granted on Pardee Road and Charing Drive, where we granted area variances? We did not apply the standards for use variances to those applications. So where does that leave us with respect to what we've done in the past versus what we're now saying is required? Does that mean that those property owners need to reapply for a use variance?
No, so those applications are separate applications that were dealt with previously.
But they're parking bucket trucks in their driveways.
Correct.
Which are now being interpreted as construction equipment that's prohibited, that requires a use variance. We granted them a variance of the area standards. We did not grant a use variance. We didn't find that they could not, realize a reasonable rate of return upon the value of their investment in the property without parking a bucket truck on it. So I see that creating problems with respect to them. They could be outsited tomorrow for not having a use variance that they need. And there'd be nothing wrong with that because they didn't apply for it, we didn't grant it, and it wasn't known by anybody that it was needed then. So, I mean, I'm having a lot of problems with this. I think we create a number of problems by saying that now this is something that requires a use variance.
And that point's well taken, and I understand that there may be precedent that's inconsistent with this interpretation, but the board has to deal with the interpretation that's before it this evening and review this application in connection with that interpretation, putting past precedent aside.
I think the problem here, though, comes back to where we started, that it's been deemed a construction vehicle, which makes no sense.
A memo that went out.
I mean, I don't see.
Why does it make no sense? I don't get it. It is, the vehicle can be used for construction.
No, but we don't
It
want
can
to
be
bring a
used to
copy.
put
We
up
told him a
wire
copy would
cable.
be-
Incorrect.
It can be used to put up.
No, no.
I'm sorry, Mr. LaPerry, that's absolutely incorrect. If I could have the opportunity, I'd love to
I know you
clarify.
use it for maintenance, but
The vehicle has no construction capabilities. And Mr. Hinman, if I'd have known you were seeking out this information, I would have gladly provided
Could you
it.
define construction capabilities?
Construction capabilities would enable the vehicle to carry a large spool of either cable or strand or both.
trailers are used for that, and/or other trucks are used for that. To go up on one end of a pole to pull wire.
If I could finish, I would
Okay.
explain the rest. The other part of what makes a construction bucket is the strength of the boom. There's a company, you've probably seen them driving around for Frontier. Telstar is one of the main popular companies. They have stronger, heavy-duty booms that are rated for several hundred pounds load to be able to carry that strand up under tension while it's being constructed on the poles. Our trucks don't have that capability. They're light-duty buckets, fiberglass, 300-pound capacity just for strictly maintenance. The only spool you'll find on that truck is for temp cable, for house cable, and that's all we carry. That's all we can carry. We don't have any construction capabilities with that truck.
But if you were pulling temp cable or some type of cable, you're constructing a line.
It's the same cable that the house installers use, strictly
But my
for
point
temporary
is-
short
point is,
sections.
We're getting into a debate of what the truck is. I mean,
I'm not debating, I'm stating the facts, sir. It has no construction capabilities. I don't have a construction boom. It's not, I don't have to have a CDL to drive the truck. That's another typical characteristic of a construction bucket. You have to have a CDL to drive it because their gross vehicle weight is however much more than ours. It's not a construction bucket. We employ contractors for that. We don't have an in-house construction crew. They do not have that capability.
And Mr. Chairman, your statement that this requires a use variance as opposed to an area variance, what's the, just because I'm not sure, I just read through the interpretation, it only references a variance. Is it because it's a prohibited type of vehicle that it requires the use variance?
It's not permitted at all.
Okay.
So if to allow it is not a area deviation from height or weight or anything like that, it's a deviation from the use. It's prohibited. Parking of it, construction equipment is a prohibited use. So to allow it would require a use variance, from my understanding.
That's
Assuming
correct.
you're willing to accept that it's a construction vehicle.
Assuming that it's a construction vehicle.
All
And
right,
that's,
so now you assume it's not a construction vehicle, you go back to the area variance and the size of the vehicle and the fact that it's a commercial truck not owned by the owner occupant.
right, which is where our discussion had been and where I think it ought to be. I don't think this falls within construction equipment. That's prohibited, is my point. I think
At this point, the code enforcement officer's interpretation, we have an application for an area variance. There are some words from a town employee that are entitled to some amount of respect, but my recollection from our former council was that we looked at this almost like a trial de novo, so to speak, and that we can make our own determinations
Right.
if something is needed. So the weight that I give the code enforcement officer's words is very small, in that the issue before us is whether or not a variance needs to be granted for this, that being an area variance, and that's what's really before us. I didn't think that the construction, the fact that the code enforcement officer is now saying something to us about his interpretation of that, I don't know that it changes the application before us.
I think it necessarily has to.
I think it does, and I think before we proceed, we need to be clear on what the application is. Is the application before you this evening for a use variance, or is it for an appeal of the code officer's determination? And I think we need to be clear on that before we proceed, because I think those are two separate issues. If it were for an appeal, you would first need to take up that appeal, decide on the appeal, and then pending the results of that appeal, you may or may not need to visit the use variance issue.
Oh, I'm not sure that were you given a copy of the?
I was provided, sir, with a copy of this email this afternoon. So I have had no opportunity to really digest this, let alone appeal it.
All right. Because your application initially was for an area variance that would allow you to park the bucket truck in your driveway the way you'd been doing it for a while, right?
Yes, sir.
All right. And that's what I thought we were dealing with. Now, with the code interpretation from the code officer, it changes it, and it isn't what we're dealing with. But I think that in determining the applicant's application for an area variance, I think we're within our bounds to say we don't, if that's our conclusion, that we don't accept this interpretation, and that we're going to continue to deal with it as a area variance and not as a use variance. And I think that's an issue that we would need to determine, that we could determine.
And before you do that, I think you would need the applicant to apply for a determination of the code officer's interpretation. He would essentially need to appeal the interpretation to this board before you proceed with an area variance or use variance. That's a separate matter.
Does it require does an appeal require a separate application, or do we have the same discretion that is given to a court under the CPLR, that where somebody who's asking for relief from the court fills out the wrong form or uses the wrong words, that the court can interpret that and treat it as if it was an application for the relief?
Power to convert any proceeding.
That's what we said. So
Can I interrupt with a quick question?
are you disagreeing with the code enforcement officers?
Carrie's got a quick question.
Yes. Yes. Are you disagreeing with the code enforcement's interpretation?
Completely, sir.
Okay, all right.
What I was going to say is, in light of the information regarding the capacity of the truck in terms of its ability maybe not to meet the definition of construction, at this point I wanted to ask our deputy town attorney, in light of that information.
Would you like to meet with him privately and not on air?
I wanted to confer, if we could, just.
Sure, we'll take a recess so you can confer with him.
Is that okay?
Yeah, that's
I
fine.
apologize. Thank you.
I certainly don't want to deprive anyone of the opportunity to get consultation with their representatives. I mean, that's.
I need a men's room break.
We will be in recess, why don't we come back at 9 o'clock?
The reason we don't allow these vehicles to park in residential areas is because they're
in terms of the capabilities of the vehicle in question. I would like to change our interpretation of the code with reference to that being classified as a construction vehicle or a trailer. So I don't know if my verbal okay is enough for the board, or I could also send everybody a memo in the morning to that effect too. And,
No, it's fine. We have you on tape. We have you on videotape. You're golden.
Yeah, have me on the record. All right, thank you. Thank you.
Half the town is watching you,
Really?
provided their service is up and running.
I would hope so.
Okay. All right, so we're back to an area variance application, and now we get to the question of the 6 components that are set out in the statute, one of which obligates the applicant to provide the weight information, and I saw that you provided a slip to us with the tag from inside the door. The problem is that the tag from inside the door is before they added all the stuff onto the back.
Yes, sir, I don't have any type of a placard that lists actual curb weight. That's what I explained when I submitted that. It's just gross vehicle chassis weight, which is the maximum capability of the chassis. So it's not really a true indication of the curb weight by any means.
So it could be less than that.
Oh, much less. We don't carry that much weight around. That's the maximum capability of the chassis, as I mentioned in the email that accompanied the photograph.
So, as I drive along the thruway in places, I see that there are truck weigh stations. Isn't that where they weigh trucks and determine how much they are?
I suppose they would, yes, sir. I've never been weighed.
Isn't there a place in town where you can weigh a truck?
I don't know.
And I'm told that there are.
I know scrap yards would weigh you, but I don't know how accurate those are.
Scales out in Henrietta.
Truck scales in Henrietta, I'm told.
Okay.
Can you,
It'll be probably more than the 10, is it 10,500 is the limit? It's probably going to be a little more than that, I would guess. I would have to get it weighed to be sure, but.
I would think you're right. I think it is more than 10,000.
Yeah, I mean, if it's more than that, then it's just, I would imagine it's more than 10 with all the equipment that we carry. So I can't say for sure how much.
I would agree with it.
I thought it had more to do with the gross vehicle weight that they were looking for anyway, so that's why
Yeah, it says the gross vehicle weight up to 10,500 pounds is indicated on it says as indicated on the manufacturer's rating label.
Right. That's why I provided that.
And what is the manufacturer's?
16.5 for that truck.
16,500.
All right. So.
But again, that's not curb weight, so it's.
Right.
I mean.
So it's going to be less than that, but it's going to be more than 10.5.
Possibly. I would say it's likely. I can't say for sure.
I would agree with you.
Probably right around there.
I'll rely upon our board expertise. I always do in whatever area it falls in that we have on the board, and Mr. LaPerry is very good at that.
Again, based on my experience with the boom and the box, this truck is probably over 10,500 pounds.
So then in looking at 235-1041 D, we have a gross vehicle weight in excess of 10,500 pounds. We're dealing with one such vehicle. It's personal use by the occupant of the dwelling unit. No parking or storage of such vehicles on vacant lots or lots without a principal structure. We're not dealing with that. Parking within a public highway or right-of-way is prohibited. We're not dealing with that. Occupants shall submit proof of ownership and vehicle weight when requested by the building inspector. So we're dealing with a gross vehicle weight in excess of 10.5, a lack of personal use by the occupant of the dwelling unit, and the question of ownership of the vehicle. Those are the three things that we're dealing with under those 6 criteria that are set forth.
And on the issue of ownership, my understanding, regardless of what the code enforcement officer has said, is that the code must mean ownership by the property occupant. And the reason is simple. Everything is owned by someone. What difference does it make if you can give you a document that says, oh yeah, Joe Blow owns this. Here's proof of ownership. Mickey Mouse owns this. Here's proof of ownership. The code cannot mean proof of ownership by someone else. It's got to mean proof of ownership by the applicant, by the resident.
I think you're right.
Okay. Just wondered, there was a little confusion at the last meeting. I just wanted to make
And
sure
that's,
that.
well, that's because that issue didn't come up in the other two cases that we had. And when I read through the minutes from Charing Road, and it was interesting because those minutes predate my presence on the board, but I knew we'd voted on it, but we voted on the extension after the first 3 years. That's when I was on. And then with respect to the Pardee Road application, in neither one of those instances was owned, but that would be part of the variance, would be a variance from the requirement of occupant ownership of the vehicle. The other variance is lack of personal use, and then the weight. So those are the three factors that you're looking for a variance from. You're looking for a variance of the limit of 10.5, a variance from the used also for personal use, and the personal ownership by the applicant. So those are the.
Mr. Chairman, can you explain that personal use one a little bit more?
Well, the statute says that general requirements, the following requirements shall apply. And then the third one is personal use by occupant of the dwelling unit. So I assume that to mean that in addition to using it for work, the occupant also uses it for personal things, like picking up groceries and going to Home Depot and going over to the dry cleaners and.
Well, I guess my question there is, it used to be, and maybe the attorney would have to weigh in here, but when you had a company-owned vehicle at home, your first call of the day and traveling from your last call to home was considered personal use.
Not anymore.
Is that true?
No, my understanding is that if it's a company vehicle, if you're leaving the house with the company vehicle to have some kind of a meeting that is apart from your actual home office, then that is considered on the job. And I think that's currently how it is.
Yeah, that's a fair interpretation.
All right, so we're back to what I was talking about, right? Picking up groceries, going out to dinner in it, that kind of stuff? All right. So, and you don't use it for
It's
personal?
strictly prohibited, yes,
Right.
sir. It's strictly to and from work.
They
And
don't want you driving back from weddings.
no,
Right.
that would be bad.
That issue's come up recently, so just sort of stuck in my mind.
Throw that out there.
Just throw that out there, yes.
With my wife driving the bucket, you mean?
Or a friend, yeah. Yeah,
That probably wouldn't be too good.
all right. So, is there anything, I think, we had a hearing at the last meeting. We reviewed all this stuff pretty extensively with you then. Is there anything that you want to add to what you presented to us at the last meeting?
Not really, sir. I was just kind of confused about the whole construction. I thought we had touched on that before, but
Well, that's out of the way now.
I'm glad
We're back
we were
to
able
where
to
we were.
get past that. So, no, I mean, I just would want to say that though some board members won't agree with this statement based on previous remarks that were made in the last hearing, it has introduced extra wear and tear on my vehicle, extra expense on my part, and I know certain people don't agree with that, but it is considered not only a benefit, but, you know, it does save wear and tear and maintenance on your own vehicle, and that's been reversed now, and that's a trend that I've been fortunate enough to benefit from for 16 years, and now that's been taken away. So that has introduced a small increased financial burden on my end for that. And I understand some board members don't agree with that, but it's the same as if you were to equate a higher paying job to a lower paying job. You go to a higher paying job because it pays you more. It's the difference between the two. I'm expected to absorb, in other words. If if it's not granted. So it is what it is. It's plain and simple. It adds more cost to me, so.
I wouldn't want you to think that the board doesn't recognize that there is an increased cost. It's just, as we talked about it, the question is who should shoulder that difference? Should it be your neighbors or should it be the person who has the job?
But I'm not asking any neighbors to shoulder any cost at all.
Well, you are by trying to keep a prohibited vehicle in your driveway.
How so? How would I be asking them to shoulder a cost, sir?
See, the
No, I don't
whole
understand.
idea
I'm
is-
asking a question.
I think what Mr. Paulino's getting at is that there could be a perceived reduction in property values or some other intangible detriment to your neighbors by having that truck there. It may not be monetary, it could just be, inconvenience, it could be visibility, things like that can be taken into consideration.
I also mean, in the grand scheme of things, you're asking your community through this board to give you a variance, to say that the rules don't apply to you. So that's when I say you're asking your neighbors, I mean the town of Arundequoit. You're saying, town of Arundequoit, it costs me more money to drive when I can't use my company vehicle. I need someone to give me an exception from the rules. So when I say my neighbors, that's what I'm talking about.
That's not the only reason I filed for it, though, is we've been over this, too, and explained everything in my letter and my
And I appreciate all
application.
of that.
There are more reasons than just financial burden on my part. It really does have to do with response time and everything else to stay secure in my job.
Does
I mean,
does Mr. Lonabille still work for Time Warner?
Yes, sir.
Because I noticed in the minutes that we had in the meeting pertaining to Pardee Road, that he came and he accompanied the applicant.
Wasn't he here with you the last time?
No, that was my manager. Mike Lonabille is a supervisor for the central part of Rochester. My supervisor actually lives way out in Oakfield, so he wasn't able to attend. My manager filled in his place, and
Why, I mean, again, the burden for extra driving for you to work and that, why, as a company, can't Time Warner come up with a solution to get you a car to drive home instead of a truck, or find a closer convenient place to park this truck so that you can take a 2-minute ride to Ridge Road East and pick up your truck in the morning or when you need it, and let them incur the expense of keeping that truck somewhere else. It shouldn't be the burden on you, and it shouldn't be the burden on the town to just for their convenience and your convenience that the town has to let you park it in your driveway. I mean, that's, again, I would ask Time Warner or your boss, say, hey, well, can't you find me a place to park it up on Ridge Road so I don't have to drive 10 miles
I
to
could
work?
partly answer that in that they would need a secure location, and
I'm sure they could find one for the
I don't
right
know
price if
how
they
willing
wanted
they are to, sublet or rent multiple locations just for the convenience of parking trucks. The trucks carry a large amount of expensive inventory, so they need to make sure that the vehicles are secure. So an employee's home, what better location than an employee's home than, it's much better than a remote unmanned facility, in other words. I know what you're trying to say, but
Again, I get all that.
I can't speak for the company's facilities department. That's a whole different deal.
Right, and that's one of the things that I think is troubling us, that you're here standing in front of us as a resident of the town who's had this, whose employer says, you're going to take this truck home, and you're going to keep it in your driveway, and, the town is telling you, well, that's a problem from the town's perspective, and your neighbors are fine with it, apparently, from what I recall from what they said. But the one who's deriving the most amount of benefit from it is Time Warner. And when I read through the minutes of Mr. Domenica's application over on Pardee Road, what struck me as being somewhat different is that he was assigned to the Arundequoit area. So he was, not only was he was benefiting by having it available to go to work immediately, and Time Warner was benefiting by having it able to be parked in his driveway and not have to find and pay for alternative parking. But the town was getting a benefit because it was being used, his area was the town of Arundequoit. And his supervisor, Mr. Lonabille, came in and testified to that. And if, if Time Warner was, if you were here telling us, well, I work throughout the town, then I wouldn't see any difference at all between your application and the application on Party Road. But you're only in the town of Arundecoit if there happens to be an outage in the town of Arundecoit on the night that you're on call.
Right,
Which isn't the most common of situations.
our areas are actually changed quite often, so the fact that he was in Arundecoit at that time was probably just a coincidence. He's a city tech that I know of. He's no longer even.
That wasn't
in
mentioned then.
Arundecoit. No, he works in the city now. I mean, that's the thing. We move around all the time, so I could tell you that I could be in Arundecoit tomorrow by request, and that could change in a year, could change in 6 months. It's all really at the needs of the company. So, I mean,
Mr. Hinman, I don't know that many board members have any additional questions.
Well, I appreciate that. Okay. All right. I know you're trying to move us along. I appreciate that. How many Time Warner employees live in Arundecoit, do you know, with these, that are required to take these trucks home at night?
8 or 10 that I could think of. 3 or 4 just in my immediate neighborhood.
With this size bucket truck?
Not necessarily. Some have vans.
Right, the vans.
Some have buckets, some have vans. So, yes.
Anyone else have any questions or comments at all?
Yeah, I just can't let this go because it's really eating at me. Because, first of all, I would like to say, I think you're a class act. I'm glad you're a resident of our town, which makes this more complicated because I do not agree with putting a big ugly bucket truck on a road, on a driveway. I don't care if it weighs 5 pounds or 5,000 pounds. It's something that people have to look at. They have no choice. It's up and down. It's going to be out there all the time. You don't have the situation where you can at least hide the thing. It's right out there, and it's not yours. It belongs to the people you work for, and they don't care what that does to the property of values of Arundecoit. All they're concerned about is they have that truck available to an employee. Now you're kind of caught in the middle because I believe you do care about what the town looks like and property values and all that stuff. And so do I. And I'd be very happy if you lived next door to me without the bucket truck.
Appreciate that, sir. I mean, I do what I can to try to make a living and pay the taxes and
Understand
so
all
on and
that.
so
We've been
forth. I
through
mean,
that,
I'm
but
just
it's,
trying to
The
make a living.
bottom line is it's against the code, and I give this board a lot of credit for trying to figure out a way to accommodate you. But I'm at the end of my rope with it because it still is a big truck in the town, which should not be here, in my opinion. So just so you know, it's not a personal thing, but I have to vote against it.
I understand. I would politely argue that the vacant house at the end of my block is a bit more of an eyesore than a bucket truck, but that's a matter of my opinion. So.
Gotcha.
And you, by the way, take nice care of your house. You got a nice looking house. It's a nice neighborhood, nice house.
Thank you.
Like Russ said, you seem like a nice stand-up person, and it's not personal.
So wouldn't the middle ground here be, as I understand this, you're on call like one night a week on average, correct?
With the current schedule,
Current schedule.
we found that's going to change too. So we're going to go back to week-long on
I
call.
believe we asked this at the last hearing, if it were 2 or 3 times, if we could limit it to that, and I believe the applicant was not interested in that option.
I'm sorry? I wasn't interested in what option?
I believe we asked the question, would it be possible to grant a variance only sometime, as opposed to all the time when you need to take it home over? And I believe the response was, no, that wasn't acceptable.
Area variance.
If you had a variance that allowed you to bring the truck home just when you were on call, would that be okay with you?
Mr. Hinman asked me that at the last meeting, and I believe I responded that would be, I would agree with that. I would gladly accept that if that's what they decided. I would obviously prefer full latitude because my on-call rotation is just that. It's rotational. It's different every week. So as I mentioned before, I can't give you a set schedule because it changes. And we just found out that may change again, back to the week-long stints like we used to do. So it's a very dynamic operation.
and I'm not going to repeat, because we went through it before, but, all right. Any other questions or comments from the board? Anyone wish to speak in favor of this application? Anyone wish to speak in opposition to the application? Anyone like to talk about it? Seeing none, we'll close the hearing with respect to this matter, and we believe have reached the end of the agenda, correct? All right. So normally we would take a break, but we took our break already. So, looking out over and surveying the audience, I believe that we have the folks from Orenda Drive, correct? And we have
Bayshore.
Bayshore. So, Mr. Brett's application for Bayshore, we will consider that one first. Then we will turn to the application from the McCloskeys. And then we'll go to Twilight Drive. And then we will go through the agenda in the order that they appear after that. So, with respect to the application pertaining to 1336 Bayshore Boulevard, I believe this is a type 2 action for seeker purposes. And does anyone wish to make a motion with respect to that application?
I'll give it a go. I'd like to make do we need to do each variance as a separate or all one? The two side setbacks and the height?
I think we can make findings that are common to all, but I think we need to have 3 separate votes.
Correct. I would take each variance individually.
All right, so the first one is the side setback for the 2-story addition. This, number one, it's application, and it is 1336 Bayshore Boulevard. I believe that we should approve this application, and the first part of it is the side addition with a side setback of 1 foot, 0.8 inches, and that is, I'm not sure if that's the one for the, no, that's the one for the fireplace. And I don't believe that is a substantial variance. I believe that the fact that the house is kind of close to the lot line to begin with, it is a cantilevered small section of the house. It will be up off the ground. Again, I don't believe it'll have an environmental effect. It is a self-created issue because he's obviously doing a big renovation on this house and wants to add to it and make it look nice. I don't believe it affects the environment in any problem, and again, I think we should approve that one based on the fact that it is not a substantial impact on the area.
I'll second.
And then we want to, we got to take a vote. Joe?
I second it.
Joe seconded it. So we'll do the vote. With respect to the motion for the side setback that deals with the further extension of the staircase area and the fireplace. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? That motion carries 7 votes in favor, no opposed, no abstentions, and we are all present. The second variance relates to the side setback for the second story of the structure.
So we did both, the last one was for, I just spoke about the fireplace. You included the setback for the staircase also?
Yes.
Yes, okay, good.
I thought I'd heard you mention the staircase.
Okay. So you want to do for the balcony, for the second story balcony?
It's the second story and the balcony, yes,
Second story and the balcony, okay.
because he's going up with a second story as opposed to 1.5.
This is a little bit confusing here on the height, but we'll go for the height.
This isn't the height. The second one is
This is the one at the bottom of it, right? If you're looking at the application?
no, the second setback is for the second story. It's actually up at the top of the addition, and then the height is the third. The second story addition, as we combine the fireplace and the staircase, we'd be combining the second story balcony and the addition because it's all the same setback. It's a continuous line going
Why don't you
down.
take that one right over then?
All right, the motion would be that we approve the variance for the side setback with respect to the second story addition and the balcony, and I would incorporate the identical findings that were incorporated in Mr. LaPerry's motion, and simply indicate that at the height approximately 10 feet off of the ground, there's no difference in consideration than there is at ground level with respect to the side setback requirement.
Before you do that, the balcony needs a front setback. Want to stick that on there too? Or
And
do you
a
want to do
front-
it separate
Yes, and the front
for the balcony?
and the front for the balcony as well. And again, with the front setback, while there may be some question as to the ownership of some rather significant portion of the land lying between the east edge of the balcony and the west shore of the bay, the fact remains that there's a considerable amount of distance there, and although the town characterizes the waterfront as the front of the property, most people would think of the front of the house as being what fronts on the street, and it's not going to create any significant issues, no changes in the neighborhood. The second story balcony focuses on the water, which just about every property on the waterfront focuses on the water, so there wouldn't be any change to the character of the neighborhood. You
I'll
agree with that?
I'll second that.
Well, Mr. Paulino seconded
Oh,
that. It's all part
okay.
of the same one.
All right.
Still second.
All right. So all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? So the motion carries, 7 votes in favor, no votes opposed, no abstentions, and we're all present. Then the third variance relates to the height. This is for the roof with the cupola. Does someone wish to make a motion with respect to that
I'll
variance?
continue that. We approve the height with the cupola and the height of the house. Again, I don't believe that it'll be a substantial, it's not substantial, based on where the house sits. The foundation of the house is down the hill, so I don't believe it'll hurt the character of the neighborhood or obstruct anybody's views of anything. I think, again, it is a self-created problem because he'd like the cupola for 2 different reasons, aesthetics and also to vent his home with it. Also, environmentally, I don't think it's going to hurt anything. So based on those criteria, I think we should approve it.
Second.
Any discussion? All I would indicate is that I'm going to, vote to approve it, but I am not going along with approving a height variance for aesthetic reasons, since the cupola has some functionality to it in terms of ventilation. I'm willing to agree to it for that reason and that reason alone, because my concern is if we start granting out variances because things will look better, who knows where that could lead. But
I believe the chairman is also cognizant of the fact that there are 42 steps down to the base of the property from where the street is, which also is a factor for allowing the cupola
Yes, I recognize that, but again, I'm doing it based on functionality and not on aesthetics, so it's a concurring opinion, if you will. Any other discussion or questions, comments? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? And we're all still present. Motion carries 7 votes in favor, no opposed, no abstentions, and we're all still present. Good luck, sir. The next application pertains to 452.
No, 54?
No, I'm sorry, 54 Arenda Drive.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we approve this request for a variance with regard to the fences on 54 Orinda with the following findings.
That type 2 action that we're dealing with?
Exactly.
Yes, that's what I thought. Okay.
There will be no change to the character of the neighborhood with these 2 small fences going up. With the wildlife population of the area, there's really no alternative that would not require the variance. It's not a very substantial request. In fact, it's pretty minimal. Would have no effect on the physical or environmental conditions. As a matter of fact, you'd be hard-pressed to even see it when it's up. Is the situation self-created? I suppose you could make an argument that it is, but it really isn't, because you have an issue of wildlife as the main motivation for this. So based on those findings, I move that we approve this.
Second.
Who said second?
Mr. Paulino seconded.
Thank
you. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries, 7 votes in favor, no opposed, no abstentions, and we're all still present. Next item on the agenda for which an applicant remains present is the application pertaining to 129 Twilight Drive, and this is also a type 2 action for seeker purposes. And does someone wish to make a motion with respect to this application?
Mr. Chairman, I think it might be an unlisted action under seeker.
Unlisted, okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I get them confused at times.
And I did not see an EAF in the application package.
EIF, what?
Environmental assessment form that you would use to complete seeker?
She actually filled one out, but when the change of the nature was just, we thought changed back to area, once we took off the part about that the use was no longer a problem. We've reverted back to an area variance. No.
Yeah, even as an area variance, because it
does.
doesn't relate to dimensional issues.
She did write something up
It's
that the
an
board can
unlisted
go
action.
over with your help.
Sure.
In fact, it's on the back of,
Not sure where it is.
I may have to grab it upstairs, so can you do the next one? I'll come right back.
Has the applicant completed, or has the town, with the applicant's assistance, completed part
Yeah.
1? Yes?
Carrie did.
Okay,
yes.
so then.
Is that
we can do
enough?
Findings based on the environmental issues associated with this request, and if the board is so inclined, you could issue a negative declaration.
Were any environmental
No.
concerns identified in part 1?
No.
All right, so I would move that we find, what are we trying?
So.
A negative,
the
I would
motion
move that we
be-
make a negative declaration with respect to this application.
Yeah, so that it's an
under seeker.
unlisted action, and that you'd recommend a negative declaration be issued.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? So we have unanimously made a negative declaration for seeker purposes. Now, did Mr. LaPerry say he was tempting the motion on this?
Yeah, I'll make a motion on 129 Twilight Drive I make a motion that we deny the application. I do believe it will change the character of the neighborhood. I do believe it is a self-created problem, maybe not by himself, but him and his boss. I do believe that, it's a detriment to the neighborhood. It's an eyesore to the neighborhood, and we in the town we don't need, or we shouldn't be having, with exceptions obviously once in a while, but we shouldn't be having these type of trucks parked in a nice residential street.
Is there a second? All right, any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Nay. Any abstentions?
Who are the two nays?
Myself and Mr. Hammond.
Okay.
And so the motion carries, 5 votes in favor, no, 2 opposed, no abstentions, and we all continue to be present. All right, the next item on the agenda would be 452 Pemberton Road.
I'd like to make a motion.
This is a,
Type 2 action for seeker purposes.
yes,
I make a motion that we grant the variance as applied for based on the following findings. Number 1, there will be no adverse environmental impact. Number 2, this is a minimal variance that they're asking. Number 3, the need for it is not self-created, and that the daughter has some unfortunate medical issues, and it will not impair the character of the neighborhood in any way. I would only add one condition, that they do stain and or paint the front deck entryway after a year, or within a calendar year, after the wood is dried, to make it match the house.
so the
as they
condition,
said they would.
right, so the condition would be that the applicant apply an appropriate protective covering,
Not to be confused with an awning or roof.
right, to the surface of the structure within 1 year. Is that it?
Yes,
Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
And I would second the motion. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries, 7 votes in favor, no opposed, no abstentions. We all continue to be present. One thing I would ask Mr. McCann if the town could look into, seems to me that although in this situation it was occasioned by a health issue pertaining to a child, there are a number of people in the town who increasingly are having access problems to their homes, and as I go around, I see a lot of different approaches. A lot of them are usually metal ramps that are installed over, and the way they did this here, I think, is a real credit, and I think the town might be well advised, given the nature of the population, and I think we have one of the largest concentrations of seniors in the county, to perhaps come up with some kind of standards for how to make handicapped accessible improvements to structures that wouldn't necessarily require variances.
Yeah, we'll definitely do that, Mr.
Okay, thank you.
Just so you know, we do have that already. If it's a handicap ramp, they wouldn't have come. But this is a deck that might be a ramp in the near future, and part of it was nothing to do with the handicap ramp, because we discussed that in the office, that maybe we could issue it that way. But that's not the way it was designed right yet. But we already do that. If you have
I
a
was thinking
handicap
of it
ramp, you can
Because the reason for it was to make it accessible for the daughter with a handicapping condition. So
Yeah.
I thought it might, that if the town came up with some things that made it clear that those kinds of things and how they should be done, it might make them look better in the town.
Just more attractive, yeah.
Yeah. Next, type 2 action that we have to deal with is 340 Rock Beach Road. Is there, does someone wish to make a motion with respect to this application?
I move that we approve the area variance as requested for 340 Rock Beach Road. The change is not necessarily substantial. It's a small area of the driveway. It is not going to be, it's not going to have a negative environmental impact. Rather, it will have a positive one by collecting water runoff and keeping it out of the gutter. It is slightly self-created, but it will improve the character of the neighborhood.
Second.
Are we going to do two motions on this one too, or are we approving the whole thing?
Should do two individual motions. There's two variances.
I think that motion was for the 3-inch.
That motion is for the one that's the 3-inch setback?
Yes.
Okay. And all those in favor say, well, first, is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries, 7 votes in favor, no opposed, no abstentions. We all continue to be present. I assume you want to make the same motion with respect to the other section?
I do.
Okay. And Mr. Thomas, you're seconding that one as well?
I certainly am, sir.
All right. Any discussion on that one? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries, 7 votes in favor, no opposed, no abstentions, and we all continue to be present. Next type 2 action for seeker purposes is 160 Brook Trout Lane. Anyone wish to make a motion with respect to this application? I would move that we grant the variance with the following findings. The addition of the sunroom on the back will not create a change to the character of the neighborhood. It's largely not visible from most of the other homes in the neighborhood. Given the layout of the house further back from the road than the other houses, the one that's going to be most greatly affected is actually on the street to the east of the property, and they indicated that they didn't feel it would change the character of their neighborhood at all. There really is no alternative that would require a variance, or that wouldn't require a variance, since they want to go off the back. There's already the deck there. Although it may seem on paper to be substantial, in reality, given the open area of the neighborhood and the location of the house on the lot, it really is not a substantial request. It won't have a detrimental effect on the physical or environmental conditions if it's granted. It's not a self-created hardship. It's created by the layout of the house on the lot and the need to have the area enclosed so that it can be used by the homeowner without concern about the, I forget what.
Bees.
Bees and wasps, yes, which I'm always in favor of just about anything that takes care of bees and wasps.
I will second that motion, underscoring the fact that if the neighbor adjoining to the rear did not consent, it would be a different case. But in this case, because the neighbor to the rear did consent, even though it's a small property, I second for all the findings that the chairman has made.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries, 7 votes in favor, no opposed, no abstentions. We all continue to be present. The next application of a type 2 nature for seeker purposes is at 16 Angelus Drive. Does anyone wish to make a motion with respect to this application?
I'll make a motion that we approve the request for an area variance, and that based on the fact that it's not a substantial motion. It's for a fairly small 6-foot fence for privacy purposes. I don't see there's any adverse physical or environmental effects. I guess you could say it's self-created because I want some privacy, and I don't have a problem with that. And there's really no other means that you could achieve the same thing other than some other type of, different type of fence or so forth. But again, I move that we approve this request.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries, 7 votes in favor, no votes opposed, no abstentions. We continue to be present. The application pertaining to 2407 St. Paul Boulevard, after considerable contemplation by the applicant, is on hold until the applicant is in a position to provide us with further information relating to certain questions that arose at the meeting tonight. The last item on the agenda then would be the review and approval of the minutes for the meeting, which was held on September 14th, 2015, at which we were all present. Has everyone had a chance to review the minutes of the meeting? And does anyone have any suggested changes or alterations to the minutes as presented? Seeing none, I'll move that that we approve the minutes. Is there a second?
Second.
I think the whole board seconded. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries, 7 votes in favor, no opposed, no abstentions, and we are all still present. And we are now adjourned.